Hello. Sorry for hijacking the intro for a second. I just wanted to let you know as like a bit of a forewarning before this video starts. This video is unfinished. I wanted to add some flair to this to make it look like what I call Matt Pat on a budget, but I've been dealing with burnout for the last month or so, and while piecing this together, it got too much. So what you have is what you have. So like half of it is you have your visual cues for what I'm talking about, and then the other half is just Moist Critical talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. So that's your forewarning, and sorry I couldn't make this look good, but I really wanted to get this out because I want to get this out before Ruin. And yeah, so please enjoy the video. Alright, if you're here because of the title, I know you've seen something like this countless times in the past, but bear with me. This video has been a long time coming, ever since me and my friend set out to solve the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline and have the story make sense in some sort of logical way. People like Matt Pat and FNaF have tackled this before, but I wanted to throw my hat in the ring of an official FNaF timeline. Keep in mind, again, this is still just a theory. This is genuinely how I think the story of Five Nights at Freddy's played out throughout the 11 games in this franchise and the solid evidence that we have. And like I said, there's 11 games, 2 sagas, and countless books to take into account here, so this timeline is being split into 3 videos. We'll cover the timeline in 2 of these videos, but the final video will be a live debate between myself and my 2 friends, who you know on the channel as Icebreaker and Arrow. We'll be debating the remaining questions left after the second part, as well as explain any questions you have after the timeline is done. So, without further ado, let's get started. And before we start, I just want to apologize if I'm not looking like dead at the camera. I have written a script for this, I just don't have it memorized, so when I'm glancing like downwards, that's just me looking at the script to know what to say. I'm sorry, I wrote 7 pages of this, I'm sorry I don't have it all memorized, so forgive that, but please enjoy the video, and now, let's actually get started. To start off this entire thing, there's no better place to start than the beginning, and that beginning started years before the year 1983, when 2 men met and became partners. These 2 men were named Henry Emily and William Afton. Together, they founded a kids-themed restaurant called Fredbear's Family Diner, a place of wonder and enchantment which featured 2 animatronic performers, the titular Fredbear and a yellow rabbit named Spring Bonnie. They entertained kids during the day, and it was these performers that made Fredbear so unique. It was the reason people kept coming back. But that wasn't all. These 2 animatronics, built by Henry, doubled as a mascot costume. Instead of having these sewn together mascot costumes running around greeting the children, Henry found a way to make the animatronic performers also be wearable costumes. And that was the birth of the Springlock suits. When the animatronics weren't performing, Henry and William wore the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie suits to greet the kids. For both these men, it was a great time. Not only was their animatronic restaurant thriving, but they had families as well. Henry had a wonderful daughter named Charlie, while William was lucky to have 3 children of his own, Michael, Elizabeth, and Evan. It seemed as if nothing could go wrong. But sometimes, not all good things are as they seem. Henry and William's jobs at Fredbear's were very different. William operated the business side of the restaurant, taxes, paperwork, all that nonsense, while Henry was the creative side of the restaurant, building the animatronics and making things the way they are. And people knew that. In this community, Henry was treated like a god, kind of. People loved him. He was nice, and he was able to make creations that children loved. Seeing this praise made William furious. He was working just as hard as Henry. Where was his praise? After years of being cast to the shadows, William was starting to lose it. And Henry started to notice. He noticed William's instability was starting to grow, and Henry was afraid of what would happen if he snapped. So Henry, doing what he does best, created a new animatronic designed to track kids' wristbands to keep them safe. This animatronic was known as the Puppet. While Henry designed the puppet to keep the customers safe, there was one person he wanted to keep safe more than anyone, and that was his daughter. If William was going to snap and lose his crap, he didn't want Charlie to be hurt. Everything with this new security guard puppet went well, and people loved it. But then, in the year 1983, something would change everything forever. The day came that Henry had feared. William finally had enough. In a jealous rage, William drove down to his favorite bar called Junior's and drank his jealousy away, which in turn made him blind to morality. He was tired of always being trapped in Henry's shadow, all his hard work always being overshadowed by the great new thing that Henry had built. He was done with this. He had had enough. William, in a drunken state, decided that Henry had to pay. In that same drunken state, he returned to Fredbear's and saw something. Charlie had been locked outside of Fredbear's by bullies. They even put a box on the puppet to keep him from saving her. As the bullies left her in the rainy night, William saw his opportunity. He approached Charlie and killed her. How he did it will always remain a mystery, but what he did next wasn't. He dumped her body into a nearby alleyway and drove off into the night, freaking out and also slightly enjoying what he just did. And that could have been the end of it, but someone's programming was strong. The puppet, in a desperate attempt to follow its programming to keep Charlie safe, broke free of the box he stayed in and wandered outside the building to find Charlie. The rain was causing the puppet to short circuit, but eventually he found Charlie's body and collapsed next to her. And in this moment, everything changed. Charlie's soul possessed the decommissioned puppet, something that would become extremely important for the future of this series. As for what happened to the adults, Henry was obviously grieving the death of his only daughter, so he retreated into his work as a way to grieve. He created a company known as Fazbear Entertainment alongside William, and they launched the first ever Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, starring everyone's favorite animatronic characters, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. The restaurant was open alongside Fredbear's Family Diner, and everything was good with the world. Well, not exactly. Henry and William's relationship was strained after Charlie's death. Henry suspected that William was involved, but couldn't prove it, whereas William wanted a piece of the love that Henry was getting from everyone. Learning some tricks from when Henry was building his animatronics, William created his own animatronics and decided to branch out. He formed his own company, Afton Robotics, and planned to open his own restaurant with animatronic performers known as Circus Baby's Pizza World. These animatronic performers were more fluid than Henry's and much more advanced, especially with the titular Circus Baby. She had a helium tank, she could take song requests, and she could dispense ice cream. But this technological advancement gave William cause for alarm, especially towards his children. He knew that his advancement might backfire, and so he urged his kids to stay away from the animatronics. This especially angered Elizabeth. William had told her that he made Baby for her, and now William wouldn't let her near Baby? Elizabeth was always a loyal child, but for now, Elizabeth wouldn't be. On the very first day Circus Babies was open to the public, Elizabeth snuck into the room where Circus Baby performed so she could finally see her in action. And she was amazed. But then, something bad happened. One of Baby's features was the ability to count how many kids were in the room watching her perform. 4 kids, 3 kids, until eventually there was only one child in the room, and that child was Elizabeth. And it was at this moment, with only one child in the room, where something in Baby malfunctioned. William's limited engineering expertise finally backfired on him. Baby, not knowing what to do, unleashed the claw inside her that she used to dispense ice cream and snatched up Elizabeth, pulling her into the animatronic. An event that was witnessed by Elizabeth's younger brother, Evan. After seeing his sister get kidnapped and killed by an animatronic, Evan grew a fear of any and all animatronics. After this, Circus Baby shut down after only one day, with the official press release saying it was closed due to gas leaks. William throws the Funtime animatronics into an underground storage facility under his house, but that's when things start to get interesting, Elizabeth's dead spirit possesses Circus Baby, which can be seen by the eye color shift from blue to green. Now, William's got a powered bot loose in his underground bunker, but he's not aware of this yet, and that's not his biggest problem. After this horrible incident and the death of his only daughter, William becomes fully aware that Evan witnessed Elizabeth's death, an event that traumatized him forever, turning him into a scared little kid that gets him picked on by Michael and his friends. William knows something bad could happen, and he's not willing to take any chances. So while Henry and William were working at Fredbear's and Freddy's, William planted spy cameras in Evan's Fredbear plushies, a plushie that he views as a friend so he can keep an eye on him when he can't be there in person. Sounds innocent, right? Well, a few months later, Evan has a birthday party at Fredbear's. Michael and his friends have been traumatizing Evan all throughout the week leading up to it. Scaring him, locking him in the parts and service room, all that horrible stuff. But on the day of the party, Michael pulls off what he thinks is a harmless prank that turns into a massive disaster. Evan's mortified to be at Fredbear's. He hates that place. He's seen what the animatronics can do. But Michael decides to make the situation worse. Michael and his friends grab Evan and bring him to the Fredbear animatronic and place Evan in his mouth, thinking it to be a harmless joke. But then, as Evan's tears of fear pour into Fredbear's mouth, the animatronic malfunctions and his mouth snaps shut, crushing Evan's head and mortifying Michael and his friends. Evan is rushed to the hospital where he sadly dies from his injuries, saddening Michael and infuriating William, who promises to put Evan back together. Unbeknownst to anyone, another one of William's children possesses one of his robots, and Evan's soul winds up inside Fredbear. And what about Michael? Well, let's say the event definitely triggered some PTSD. William is infuriated to the point where he won't even speak to his own son, and Michael is haunted by his actions. So haunted that he has repeated nightmares of being trapped in his little brother's bedroom, while nightmarish versions of the characters he used to taunt Evan try to hunt him down and end his life. Something he can't escape from and never ends until the sound of his alarm clock wakes him up. Something the fan base knows as the gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. And after another death at Fredbear's, Henry and William just can't take it anymore. Fredbear's is forced to close its doors for good, and Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are thrown into storage and presumably destroyed. The rights to Fazbear Entertainment are sold to some other company, and Henry and William go their separate ways. William stays close to Freddy's to complete his mission of putting Evan back together, while Henry disappears, never to be seen again. In following years, William decides to get crazy with his plans to put Evan back together. Somehow, which we don't know how to explain, William discovers remnant, essentially inanimate objects fused with what I call soul juice. William needs more of this stuff, so he reprograms his old Funtime animatronics to use their special tools to capture kids and kill them so William can experiment with their remnant. And how does he get away with this murder spree? By creating a rental company where people can rent the Funtime animatronics for private parties, all the while collecting kids to experiment with their remnant. And now, things get interesting again. After 2 years of doing this, the year is 1985. Freddy's is booming and William Afton is going insane. He's had no breakthrough in his remnant experiments and he needs to try something new. A more hands-on approach of figuring out the secret of remnant. And this is the point in the history of FNaF that all fans are familiar with. The missing children's incident. Across several days, William Afton, disguised in his old Spring Bonnie suit, lures 5 children into the back room, their names being Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, Jeremy, and Cassidy, and kills them. This event gives Freddy some negative PR, and no one in the public eye knows where these kids went. However, security footage caught William on camera sneaking out of the back room. He is arrested and charged with the children's disappearances, but since the police can't find the bodies, they are forced to release him, and once he is released, William goes into hiding. But what happened to the kids? William just killed them and dumped their corpses, so where did they go and why can't anyone find them? The answer? The puppet. Charlie, possessing the puppet, took the bodies and stuffed them into the animatronic suits. Gabriel and Freddy, Jeremy and Bonnie, Susie and Chica, and Fritz and Foxy. Cassidy, on the other hand, was stuffed into the old and desolate Fredbear suit, which was put on lockdown in the back room. Those kids ended up possessing the suits they were stuffed in, but Cassidy shared the suit with little Evan Afton, and the two operated the suit together. Over time, the kids' rotting corpses start to become more apparent, with patrons noting blood and mucus coming from the eyes and face of the animatronics, with some likening them to reanimated carcasses. And then, after multiple health violations, Freddy's was forced to close its doors. So, Freddy's lay dormant, and the building was left to rot, but now we're going to jump ahead to the year 1986 and join back with the last two members of the Afton family, William and Michael. We don't know how they reconnected, but we know that William sent Michael down into a secret underground bunker where he's hiding the Funtime animatronics to find Elizabeth and put her back together. He spends 5 nights down there trying to free Elizabeth, which we witness in the events of Sister Location, and if you played through that game, you know what happens next. Michael helps Circus Baby free the endoskeletons of the other Funtime animatronics and frees Babies on the 5th night. However, Baby was planning this. Now that the endoskeletons were free, they could enact their sinister plan of escaping into the real world and freed from William's prison, free to do their own thing instead of being vessels for William's remnant experiments. So the endoskeletons merged together and created a new entity known as Ennard. Ennard, using the various tools that William equipped them with to lure children, tricked Michael into entering the scooping room on the wrong side. The scooping room contained a device known as the scooper, which is what the animatronics used to rip out their endoskeletons. And now Michael was trapped on the wrong side. Instead of being on the opposite side of the scooper, where Ennard was safely chilling, he was standing right in front of it. And with that, Ennard used the scooper to rip out Michael's insides and inhabit his body so they can escape into the real world without raising suspicion. However, over time, Michael's body started to decay and wither before eventually Ennard was controlling a purple corpse. In need of a fresh new body, Ennard ejects itself out of Michael and escapes into the sewer, leaving Michael's body to wither away. Fortunately for Michael, the scooper doubled as a remnant injector. Now with remnant running through his veins, he wasn't quite as dead as he thought he was. With his sister urging him not to die, Michael wakes back up and regains control of his body. However, now that his skin is purple and rotting, Michael is forced to hide in the shadows and makes a vow to himself to find William and set the souls of his victims free. Flash forward to the year 1987, a year that lives in infamy in the hearts of FNaF fans. A whole year after the events of Sister Location, Fazbear Entertainment announces that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is going to open its doors again, featuring new animatronics that are tied to a criminal database so another missing children's incident can be prevented. They even put the puppet back on display. These new and improved animatronics are put out to entertain the kids, while the old, withered, and still possessed animatronics lay in the parts and service room, only being used for parts. And things seem to be going smoothly for this new Freddy's. Everything's going fine, the animatronics are allowed to walk around during the day, but this is Freddy's we're talking about, and someone's about to make a dramatic return. William Afton, posing as the day guard, tampers with the facial recognition system of the new animatronics so he can sneak back into Freddy's during the night and avoid being spotted. Donning his old Spring Bonnie costume, William murders more children at this new establishment. Because of this, the building is put on lockdown as part of an investigation. During the lockdown, the puppet tries to lead Freddy to William, who is still hiding out in the building, but doesn't exactly end the way he planned it. A few days later, Freddy's is reopened, and a man named Jeremy Fitzgerald is hired as the new night security guard. He spends 5 nights there, which we see during the events of FNaF 2. Then, following his bonus 6th night, Jeremy is promoted to the day guard shift. The night guard shift is filled by none other than Michael Afton under the alias Fritz Smith. He's there to find and free his father's victims, including the new ones. However, Michael is fired after 1 day due to tampering with the animatronics and his odor. As for Jeremy on the day shift, things take a turn for the worst. On Jeremy's first day on day shift, he is attacked and bitten by the Mangle animatronic, and she tears out Jeremy's frontal lobe. This was an event that became known as the Bite of 87. After this vicious attack, the new Freddy's is forced to close for good. The toy animatronics are scrapped for their malfunctions, while the older, withered animatronics are put in storage for a possible reopening sometime in the future, one with a much smaller budget. Sometime after this, while William's still on his murder spree and Michael's on a mission of justice, Freddy's opens its doors again, opening them in an old Freddy's building. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are put on the stage, and they are still possessed. And as a result of the Bite of 87, the animatronics movement is restricted to nighttime so that their servo motors don't lock up. And while the puppet was locked away in the building's abandoned safe room from years past, he's still around, possessed as ever, as well as Golden Freddy, possessed by both Evan and Cassidy, continuing to haunt the building. And they're not the only ones still around, because William Afton strikes again in a spring Bonnie suit and murders 5 more children, an event that is witnessed by Foxy. Now, Foxy can do something the other animatronics can't. We see in FNaF 2, he's the only one who could see through the Freddy mask disguise. So since Foxy can see through animatronic disguises, and William disguises himself as one, you can tell there's a problem. So William does what he does best and sabotages Foxy. Foxy is then deemed out of order and is forced to spend his days in Pirate Cove, motionless and alone. William, however, isn't the only angry individual moving around at this new Freddy's location. Cassidy, one half of Golden Freddy, is angry as all hell and is ready for some overdue revenge. The spirits of the dead kids are trapped in some kind of remnant-induced trance. They never attack out of cruelty and anger, just following their programming, which sometimes leads to death. Oh well. That faulty programming causes them to just blindly kill the security guard training instructor who we know as Phone Guy. And Cassidy has had just about enough of that. So, however she does it, she snaps them out of their trance, and all those dead kids are mad. Now, they only have one goal at nighttime, and that goal is to find William Afton and kill him. But hey, it's not all bad. Michael's back. The year is 1993, and Michael Afton returns as the Night Watchman under the alias Mike Schmidt to continue his plan of setting William's victims free, and because night guards get free pizza. But things are different. Even though his skin is purple and decaying, he still looks so much like his father. A fact that confuses the animatronics, making them more aggressive than ever. Michael has to survive an entire week with bloodthirsty animatronics out to get him, all the while his brother Evan is just trying to let him know that it's him. He's there with him. It's a sad thing to think about, but afterwards, Michael gets fired again for tampering with the animatronics, his general unprofessionalism, and his odor again. And right around the time Michael leaves, Freddy's is about to close its doors for good. Due to too much negative PR gathered throughout its decade-long history and the tragedies that have taken place there, Freddy's is closed for good, and the souls of William's victims lay trapped in the animatronics that have now been abandoned. Years later, the building is in a state of disrepair. The animatronics are still active, and the children are still suffering. And then one day, Shadow Freddy comes to each one of them individually. Shadow Freddy is the ghost of an employee who is stuck in a spring-lock suit, and he's here to help their suffering. One by one, Shadow Freddy leads the animatronics to the old safe room in the building since William is hiding out in there. Don't ask why, he's just been chilling there all these years. However, the animatronics can't get into the safe room due to their programming, which prevents them from even knowing where the safe room is. Since they can't get in, William rushes out and dismantles them, leaving them as bits and parts on the ground, in an attempt to finally end their rampage. He's been hiding out in this decrepit building for years now. He's got to stop these machines that are trying to end his life. Unfortunately for William, his plan backfires. Dismantling the animatronics frees the souls within. Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, and Jeremy are all back in spirit form and corner William in the safe room. Joined by Cassidy, the vengeful spirit that she is, William is trapped in the safe room with no means of escape, and boy, he is terrified. And so, in a state of fear, he plays the one card he has left. He rushes over to the old Spring Bonnie suit that he's used as a disguise for years and puts it back on, laughing as he taunts the ghosts of his victims. However, due to the state of disrepair of the building, rain from outside seeps into the safe room, and more accurately, seeps into the Spring Bonnie suit. The rainwater causes the suit's spring locks to snap shut, crushing William inside the suit. As he bleeds out, the spirits vanish, but they aren't put to rest. They're still out there and suffering, an event known to the FNaF community as FNaF 3's bad ending. And as William continues to writhe away in the Spring Bonnie suit, the safe room is sealed up by an unknown person, and William is sealed away from the outside world in pain and very much alive. In agony, very angry, and very much alive. And that right there is a good place to end the first part. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to clear up some parts of what I just said that might be confusing, that you guys are thinking, why the hell did he say that? So here we go. So first of all, Shadow Freddy being the ghost of an ex-Fazbear employee. We learned in FNaF 3 that there is an event involving multiple simultaneous Springlock failures that deem the Springlock suits unwearable. One could say it was the bite of 83, but it's more likely that 2 employees were killed in the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie suits, since multiple Springlocks went off at the same time. And this also makes sense since Freddy and Bonnie only hold one other similarity in the series, and that's Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. And these two don't act normally. Shadow Freddy can get into the safe room while normal animatronics can't, and Shadow Bonnie glitches through walls during his minigame in FNaF 3. So they're very much ghostly in some form, and it would make sense for them to be the ghosts of employees who lost their lives in the Springlock suits. And yes, a lot happened in 1983. Charlie's death, Elizabeth's death, and Evan's death all within a year. It's insane, but it makes the most sense. We know Charlie died in 1983 because of the novel series, written by Scott himself. I don't like using the books as evidence, but there's a big difference between using the novels as evidence and using the short stories as evidence, since Scott was heavily involved with the novels while other people wrote the short stories. Scott's name was just on there because he's the creator of the franchise. So anyway, Charlie died in 1983. We definitely know Evan died in 83, and we know that before his death, Evan saw something that made him terrified of the animatronics. And what better event to get him traumatized than watching his sister get swallowed by Circus Baby? This is chaotic here, not gonna lie. And to address the elephant in the room, I did just say Michael was the guy you play as in FNaF 4. A lot of people say, well, you play as the crying child, not Michael. Well, let me explain. If Michael was traumatized following Evan's death, he would be haunted by that. And what better than to be haunted by than the characters he used to scare Evan with? He's even dreaming this in Evan's bedroom, and the Nightmare animatronics using the same tactics Michael used to scare Evan. This is his guilt taken form in the Nightmare animatronics. But that's not the only evidence. In the survival logbook, there are secret writings all throughout the book. We have largely agreed that the writings in red pen come from Michael himself. And on a page asking about dreams, Faded Text, which is assumed to be Cassidy, asks Michael if he has dreams, to which he draws a picture of Nightmare Fredbear. Only the person having the nightmare would know what Nightmare Fredbear looks like. And even better, he's there on the page about dreams. So all evidence points to Michael being the player character of FNaF 4, and the end of night minigames are just flashbacks to why Michael is having these nightmares. And that's about it for the explanations. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. I'll try my best to answer. But next time, we're covering the rest of the story. We're going to wrap up what I call the Purple Guy saga, and then go forward and cover what happens in the new FNaF saga through Help Wanted and Security Breach, and more importantly, Afton's rise, fall, and rise again. Until next time.